First, I would like also to thank, of course, CEPS and IFO for the invitation today, and also to welcome this initiative, this creation of this new network, EconPol. When I arrived in Brussels 3 years ago, I was really surprised by the lack of consensus we had both on the reasons of the crisis, but also on the economic and debt crisis, but also on the political ways of getting out of it, and finally on how to improve our economic and monetary union. And I still believe that we still haven't yet reached this consensus on what to do and how to achieve it. And clearly the think tanks, this kind of network, may be of great help to achieve this kind of consensus. Maybe a disclaimer, I'm not an economist. I try to, but I'm not an economist from my background. And second, I will speak, of course, on a personal basis. We have a brand new government in France, actually a new one since yesterday evening, and they will have to come forward with their objectives and vision for the future of the Eurozone. On top of that, both Mr. Schäuble and Mr. Le Maire, the new finance ministers, the two finance ministers, have agreed 2 weeks ago to create a working group, and this working group is currently working on many issues, and I don't have specific details on those. So kind of Chatham House rules, to say so. Maybe a few reactions to the report I just read this morning. The first one is that in both models, this Maastricht model on the one side, the US model on the other side, have some common elements, and you insist on that at the end of the report. Those are elements which were also in the reflection paper published by the EU Commission 2 or 3 weeks ago, notably how to achieve a financial union or to complete the banking union. I would add on that the capital market union. And secondly, how to enhance, reinforce the economic policy coordination, so the EU semester framework. So on those two issues, I think there is no consensus yet, but I think they will probably be part, or I hope they will be part of a roadmap, of a possible roadmap on how to enhance the EMU. So on the banking union side, it's about the negotiation of a backstop to the Single Resolution Fund, and to move forward as well on the EU Commission's proposal of a common deposit guarantee scheme. But I think CMU is also very important. As you mentioned in your introduction, Daniel, we had some misunderstanding of the financial markets before the crisis, and achieving this financing union, both banking union and CMU, will help private risk sharing in case of a crisis or new threats to the Eurozone. It's not so easy on CMU because until now CMU has been a bunch of isolated initiatives by the Commission. It's hard to translate them into a full policy project. But there are still elements to be negotiated on this field. The second element, which is common in the two processes you describe, the two models you describe, is reinforcement of economic policy coordination, so EU semester. A lot has been done after the 2008 crisis with the 2-pack, 6-pack, with the new macroeconomic imbalance procedure, but I think we can probably improve still this system, focus the European semester on the structural reforms, increase the way countries and national parliaments appropriate themselves the country-specific recommendations that are adopted by the Council and dedicated to each member state. But to be frank on this, I remember when I was a young civil servant, having worked on the broad economic policy guidelines, it's already a big, big change, especially for countries which are under scrutiny, like France, in the corrective arm of the economic deficit procedure. The CSRs, it's no part of the national debate. The Stability Pact, or our Stability Program and our National Convergence Program, National Reform Program, sorry, in March, those are being discussed, not really in the Parliament, to be frank, but mostly in the media and in the public. There is a third element which is common in the two models in your paper, but which I'm less comfortable with. And my guess is that my government will be less comfortable with as well. That's this issue with market discipline, especially on sovereign exposure. And this idea of having a sovereign debt restructuring mechanism, or even an automatic sovereign debt restructuring mechanism. Here, we still have many questions on the risk such a system could pose for financial stability. Is there a risk of having a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy? Because we will create a kind of permanent threat of a default, of a sovereign default within the Eurozone. And the market players will live with this permanent threat and maybe play with it a little bit as we had in the early 90s under the previous serpent monétaire européen, I don't know, the EU monetary snake. And second, can we trust that much the market to, are they able to distinguish, for example, between a liquidity crisis or a solvency crisis? If we look, for example, at Ireland in 2009, I think, or 2010, I don't remember, was it a solvency crisis or a liquidity crisis? What the MES is doing, could the financial markets do that by themselves? I'm not 100% sure. My third remark is on this idea of creating a kind of macroeconomic stabilization fund. I expect my new government to be strongly in favor of those kind of ideas. President Macron has several times, when campaigning, mentioned the idea of a euro area budget. So it's probably more a long-term project, but already what we at technical level had in mind when discussing those ideas earlier are very much reflected in the reflection paper by the Commission. This idea, this fund or this capacity would really be a stabilization one to face large shock, for example, what happened to Ireland, or asymmetric shock. So some ideas are around, like a protection investment scheme, help countries maintaining a high level, or at least a sustainable level of public investment in terms of fiscal, how do you say, fiscal tightness. Another idea which you've been working on is the common unemployment scheme. Here again, it's probably a long-term prospect because we all have very different national unemployment schemes, unemployment benefit schemes. But this could be, this could help alleviate the fiscal burden on individual country when facing, for example, asymmetric shock. And then there is the idea of a full-fledged euro area budget. It's probably even more ambitious because we would have to define what kind of resource, what kind of governance. And my last remark, because I think it's not so much in the paper, I think it's about the rules per se. We will still need, whatever happens, we will still need fiscal rules. And here I see, from personal view again, I see two areas of improvement. First, we will probably need to tighten domestic fiscal rules. I say domestic because it has to be appropriated by national parliaments, by the public opinion as well. not only a kind of EU diktat or whatever, but also probably, but it's even more complex and difficult, some kind of simplification or streamlining of our EU rules, which are really extremely complex. I discovered them 3 years ago when arriving. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.